Welcome to the Long Take Review, a film podcast with one eye always on the Oscar race. I'm your host, Jen Bankard, and I'm here with a friend who was also keeping track of movie trailers dropping during the Super Bowl, though arguably he was paying more attention to the rest of the game than I was. It's PT McNiff. How's it going, PT?
Tracking the commercials, tracking private jets on who may or may not attend, the usual things that sports fans do. I'm doing well. Jen. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Yeah. Didn't have a particular stake in this year's Super Bowl, and so it was very nice, relaxed. It was able to sort of like monitor the TV for the movie trailers a little bit more than normal, maybe. We are here today to react to two big movie nerd events from this weekend, and the fact that they both happened this weekend really is the only thing that connects them at all. The DGA Awards, so the Directors Guild Awards, and as we were saying, the film trailers that dropped during the Super Bowl, which usually are a pretty big deal for people who are trying to get hyped up for new movies throughout the rest of the year. We are just going to kind of react to these two bits of news, talk about kind of like our speculation, especially for the DGA Awards, what this means for the Oscar race. And then for our Super Bowl ads, just sort of like, what are we the most excited about? What looks really good? What do we have questions about potentially? But before we get into it, PT, if our fine listeners don't want to miss new episodes, what can they do?
Well, they are welcome to please follow or subscribe to the Long Take Review wherever they get their podcasts. We're talking Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Where are you listening to us now? Look for a subscribe button right nearby, and you'll get new episodes. You can also go to where we are hosted on Jen's Substack, thelongtake.substack.com, and for updates in a more social media setting, you can follow us on Instagram or Threads at the Long Take Review.
Thanks, PT. So we are going to start with the DGA Awards because there are relatively fewer sort of line items for that one, and then we'll get into the Super Bowl ads. But the big headline coming out of the DGA, which to give some context, the DGA Awards are not televised. So if you're like, wait, I didn't see these, there's a reason no one saw them, unless you were nominated or were a reporter who was invited, right? So I sort of watched bits and pieces online, like some reporters, very spottily posted clips to their accounts and stuff like that with just from their phones. So it was very poor sound quality and video quality, but I caught a little bit of it. But the main headline is that the major award for feature film directing went to Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, which honestly surprised probably very few people. But PT, what were your thoughts on this? What do you feel like this means for the Oscar race? Is this just sort of like, check, let's keep going?
I mean, kind of. I mean, it was continuing the coronation. I will say there has been, at least in the community of people like us and fans that are out there, and also maybe people more professional critics, not that we're unprofessional, but they actually get paid to do all this, who they've been kind of kicking around the idea of like, are we sure Oppenheimer's the front runner? Like, what about the Holdovers? Like, the Holdovers is actually getting all this momentum, and actually, what about Poor Things? It's chugging away and making a lot of money, and people are really into Emma Stone. Maybe Zone of Interest, like, people are actually seeing Zone of Interest, and it does sort of feel a little bit like there's no story in it's, another week goes by, Oppenheimer's still going to win. So there's nothing to print, so to speak. And that people just want there to be chatter and something to discuss. When in reality, it's sort of like how we had all talked ourselves into, like, I think, the Charles Melton might be the front runner for Best Supporting Actor. And then the Golden Globes happened and they gave it to Robert Downey Jr. and he gave a great speech. And we all were like, oh yeah, this was always going to go to Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer. Who are we kidding? So I think it's a somewhat similar. I don't know if there ever really was a strong challenge in directing, but I think that it further solidifies Oppenheimer at the top of the hill. Doesn't mean anything's a lock, but it feels like it's still the dominant force in much the same way Everything Everywhere All at Once was the dominating force last year. What did you think?
Agreed. So, I mean, I think this seals the deal for director because DGA has a really strong record of overlapping with best director at the Oscars. I think it's 89% of the time they're the same.
Wow.
So, and that's pretty high. Like if you do a lot of Oscars stats, like that's a high percentage. People have bet on much less, including myself. And so yes, I think this solidifies Christopher Nolan. I think since we have had in the past so many splits between director and picture, which wasn't really a thing before, I want to say like 2015 or something, like, you know what I mean? Like
It
the
was rare. It was definitely rare.
the
Yeah.
biggest one in recent memory is, was it Roma? Got director, and was it the Green Book year?
Yes.
I think that's what really started this whole thing of like, oh no, we can't just assume director
Well,
and picture are
there
lining up.
was also Brokeback Mountain and Crash. Like there were a few times. Like Ang Lee
Okay.
has won Best Director twice, but never won Best Picture. Right? Like that's so.
Oh yeah,
There's
that's
been
crazy.
those little moments, and then Spielberg and Shakespeare in Love is another one. In back then, but yeah, it felt for a long time like these were intertwined, and that was a rarity. Whereas maybe that doesn't feel as much the case these
Right.
days.
Because I want to say even last year with the Daniels winning, people were like, huh, okay. We were just assuming it was splitting because they were, lesser known directors, even with all of the momentum for Everything Everywhere All at Once. So yeah, I think that Best Picture is still somewhat open, though if I were to put money down today, not that I would actually bet money on any of these things because that would make it a whole other thing. But you can go to Mike and Oscar if you want to know actual betting odds. And how you should parlay things and put money down. Like they're great at that.
Oh gosh.
Me, I'm just like, I can't do that. It's already stressful enough just doing it for the bragging rights. But I do think that like, if I were to kind of call it today, I would say that Oppenheimer still is taking Best Picture as well. So, and this is just generally the steamrolling of it, because people are just talking about it getting all of the technical categories. I feel like I was listening to Ryan McQuaid was on, actually probably was Mike and Oscar the other day. They actually had a really cool who won the year in film. So it's not necessarily directly tied to the Oscars, but it was
Sure.
like, one of their ones was like difficult marriages won the year, right? Movies about teachers. Like it was a fun kind of a fun year in review type approach. So my point is that Ryan McQuaid was talking about how Oppenheimer is walking in the door Oscar Sunday with 5 wins at least.
Oh.
So it's like, and like that's not a crazy take according to
No.
most. Like that's sort of the temperature is like it could sweep a lot of technical categories plus director plus probably picture. So, it's the train is moving, but I feel like I also get nervous at this point in the season because this is primed for a like, whoops, we thought Power of the Dog was winning everything.
Right.
And then look where Coda came and snuck in. So
yeah, and I think there is, to the degree there's backlash, like the backlash is happening. Like I feel like there wasn't really too strong a negative kind of reaction when Oppenheimer came out and it was, very successful. Unfortunately, I think a lot of negativity went towards Barbie. Like people were focused on that. And now that Oppenheimer is really in center stage, I feel like I'm seeing more people be like, are we sure this movie was good? Like, I don't know, like it's too long, or the last last act doesn't matter, or this is just another celebration of like one man doing something, and whatever. And of course, these women didn't get nominated, even though they did, but not for the things they could have also been nominated in. So, like, I think that it is possible there could be some actual backlash. There also could be, well, I liked that, but like that's going to win, so let me throw a vote for this other thing, which I think that's the Power of the Dog Coda situation. Another instance, where
right.
there was the split.
The main difference, though, is that I think Power of the Dog was a little bit more polarizing than Oppenheimer. Like people, because we have to think about the preferential ballot, which if you are not super steeped in Oscars rules like we are, Best Picture is different. It's not just like whoever gets the most votes. It is a ranked ballot where everyone has to rank all of the Best Picture nominees, and it's like this crazy system where it's like if the number one choice doesn't get more than 50% of the votes, then they consider the next tier, And so then you have to start thinking about, okay, like what is everybody's number 2 and number 3? Because that could easily overtake a more polarizing number 1 pick, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, and to clarify, because I like ranked choice voting. Like I was like, can we rank choice vote in like the real world, like for things that matter? No offense to the Oscars, like it'd be great to do that in actual elections. But yeah, it's like they add up all the scores, and because it's 10 movies, presumably no one gets to 50%. Maybe there'd be some landslide here where that could happen. But it's when it doesn't, then whatever movie's in 10th place is eliminated. And so anyone who had that as their number 1 movie, then their number 2 movie gets counted as that.
Oh, that's right.
So it sort of starts to slide down, and they never release the results. We don't see the actual tallies, but the presumption is just based on raw, thinking through how many opinions are out there. There's probably 3 or 4, maybe more movies that get eliminated, and so then we might be down to someone's 5th choice. If that's Oppenheimer, that gets added to the Oppenheimer total. If it's Poor Things, it goes to Poor Things, or whatever it might be.
Right.
So,
and so I think with
yeah.
Oppenheimer in particular, unless there's some massive like backlash campaign about something specific about it, I don't feel like people are putting that below number 5. You know what I mean?
Right.
Most people, even if they were kind of just meh on it, are still acknowledging either as a technical achievement or whatever that they're like, even if I didn't love this movie like everybody else, it was still good. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone's going to be like, this is the worst. I don't get what people are saying.
Right. Like something like Power of the Dog, which probably had a solid number of people that were like, I do not like this.
Yeah.
And there were people quoted in the run up saying that. And yeah, there's folks who just didn't like it, and so they would have ranked it really low, never would have gotten to them in the preferential ballot. So even if looking at the raw numbers, the most number of people may have voted for that number 1, a movie like Coda that is like, oh, that's nice. Like a bunch of people might have put that in 3rd, and then when it got to those people, that suddenly creates this wave that pushes Coda further up. So it feels like there's other movies. I think Killers of the Flower Moon is likely more in that Power of the Dog role, if some people are just like, no, didn't like it for a variety of reasons. That's going to be my 9th or 10th movie this year. Whereas, it is interesting. I think that's a good point. I don't know how many people would be like Oppenheimer, like 9th on a ranked choice, unless they were like, who Oppenheimer doesn't need my vote. Whatever. Again, there are people who are more and more people are saying like they're on Oppenheimer. I haven't seen any Oscar voter exposés, the sort of the people sharing their ballots, which are always great, and a great reminder that Hollywood is not the progressive bastion that folks like to think it is. When you get to individual voters who want to talk about it, it's usually just like, I don't like the people who look like this. There's always something weird mixed in. Anyway, I would think that it wouldn't hurt Oppenheimer. Like those 3rd and 4th place votes, I think it will get a decent number of those. And will also be a pretty, predominant choice up top to begin with. But again, who knows? We don't know. But I think to bring it all the way back around, like you said, DGA awards for director is such a good bellwether. Since 2000, I may have been, double checking this while some of the time you were talking. There's only been 3 times since 2000 that they haven't lined up.
Oh, wow.
In the 23 years, and it was Ang Lee won it for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. The year that Soderbergh won for Traffic, it was nominated against himself. In a weird way, it's like almost like, did the DGA help people realize, oh, we're canceling out votes? And then Ben Affleck for Argo, who was famously not nominated at the Oscars, so he couldn't have won. And then Sam Mendes for 1917, who lost to Bong Joon-ho in Parasite. So, it's not impossible, but considering how many times Nolan has won, considering the wider narrative of he's overdue, and that this, he's the star of the movie in many ways. That was this is a great moment where I'm like, was this something I heard on The Big Picture, or was this something I heard when I was talking to you, Jen? Did you say this? So take it as a compliment.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably one of the nicest things you could ever say to me. That's great.
But there's someone saying like, oh, like what's happening with Cillian Murphy? Why is he not in the maybe not the front runner anymore for Best Actor? And someone said the star of Oppenheimer is Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
So he's like the star of that movie is the filmmaker. He's getting director, which means and the Downey Jr. is still the presumed front runner for supporting actor, which is maybe why there's a little window opening for Cillian Murphy to not win Best Actor, which on the one hand that's a bummer because Cillian Murphy was amazing in that movie, but also Paul Giamatti was great in The Holdovers, so that's fine.
Christopher Nolan's acceptance speech did seem conscientious of the state of his Cillian Murphy's Best Actor campaign because, and granted, like the way that this seems set up, and caveat is I watched grainy iPhone videos of this on the internet, so nice. I didn't quite catch everything, but it seemed like the way that they had it set up was that the leading actors from each film were the ones presenting the nominating awards. So the DGA is a little interesting where like every director that's nominated for Best Feature gets like basically the equivalent of an acceptance speech just for being nominated. And then they reveal the winner at the very end. So it was interesting because they had Mark Ruffalo and Emma Stone doing a funny presenter bit for Yorgos before he came up, and then Cillian Murphy was the one introducing Nolan before they revealed that he won. It was just sort of his like for being nominated that I watched, and I don't think anyone posted his actual acceptance like after he won one. But right. But Cillian, the first thing that Christopher Nolan said, and again, I set up that context because seems pretty easy when you get up on stage after an actor in your movie hands you an award to be like, aren't they great? Right. So there's a little bit of that's just built into it, is what I'm sort of saying. Right. But what he was saying such nice things about Cillian Murphy and how he's like an actor of our generation and he's been working. So like the things he was saying definitely were like, don't you want to give this guy an Oscar?
Don't you think he also was important for this movie? Yeah.
So I don't know. But
I do appreciate the vibe that you were watching like a found footage horror movie, but it was the DGA Awards.
Yes. Shout out to Clayton Davis of Variety. He was doing, and I think what happened was he probably got too busy and or was enjoying himself too much and then stopped posting videos. But I really appreciated that he managed to get a bunch out there for me to watch. So yeah.
So the other winner that's sort of worth talking about in terms of, I mean, we're glad that they got an award and also potentially a boost for the Oscar race. Oh, well, it's not. Wait, I forgot because she wasn't
not for
nominated.
director
Because she wasn't nominated for an Oscar.
But let's talk about
disgraceful. Is that Celine Song won for? Oh no, it's best first feature. Is that the?
That sounds right. I mean, it's essentially first time director.
The Michael Apted Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in First Time Theatrical Feature Film. And so Celine Song won for Past Lives, beating out Cord Jefferson for American Fiction, A.V. Rockwell for My Beloved 1001, and then two other people I don't really know. Manuela Martelli for Chile 76 and Nora Niasari for Shida. I started reading those names and I had to keep going. So yeah, but that's, again, a nice recognition. I was thinking, and then like, could she be an outside contender? Totally forgetting she didn't get nominated, even though of course she should have.
There was only room for one female director.
Apparently so. And everyone should take it and like it. But her getting an award, maybe that's a little bit of a boost in original screenplay, which is where she is nominated in the Academy Awards. So, but regardless of how it might impact the Oscars, like great, like good for Celine Song, good for Past Lives to get another piece of silverware in the trophy chest, because that's a great movie. And
Letters winner Celine Song, right?
Yes, Letters, overwhelming Letters winner. Past Lives, which took home 4 awards. At the
I think so.
letters,
We
there
we
were,
gave her director, right?
we gave her, it
Not
was
just making
director,
that up.
picture, supporting actor, and I think screenplay. Oh no, we didn't do screenplays. We kind of rushed screenplays.
Yeah, but we did. No, because remember we sort of
We
really
split
quickly
best actress.
said Killers of Flower Moon for adapted and
Anatomy of a
Anatomy
Fall,
of
I
a Fall
think, for
for.
original. But I knew it was 4 because we split actress for Sandra Hüller and Greta Lee.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So
It's a tie.
it's a tie. Exactly.
But yeah, I'm saying my point is that we were there first, DGAs.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, many people are saying the DGAs listened to the letters and were like, "Oh, we should contact Michael Apted's estate and make sure we have an award to give. Otherwise, everyone will be asking."
So obviously, I was super happy to see this, and it really is well deserved because I think just remembering the critics reacting to Past Lives when it premiered, being like, "Holy moly, this is like her first time directing," and she was a playwright before. She wasn't even trying to be a director before, right? So I remember people being so blown away that this was her first film, never mind like her first feature film. In terms of the Oscar race, you're right. This doesn't necessarily have any bearing on director because she wasn't nominated. But the fact to me that she beat out Cord Jefferson could potentially mean something for screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does this mean that Past Lives is stronger than American Fiction overall? Actually, might nudge it a little bit further ahead in screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of Cord Jefferson, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think if Cord Jefferson, so if like,
Right.
I feel like if Cord Jefferson had won this, I've been like, oh, maybe American Fiction has a shot in adapted, which it doesn't really, but like, but I think in original is a much more open field at this point.
Well, yeah, and the last movie, which I didn't even mention as is this movie actually getting the momentum, was Anatomy of a Fall. And I think people like again, following the lead of the letters, were like, well, we should maybe that's this original screenplay and that's done and locked up. But maybe, Past Lives is going to sneak in and the Holdovers is hanging out too. And I think there's also the possibility folks like there's the May December heads are like, we gotta get something. This is the only place we can do it.
That's true.
And maybe they concentrate there. So I think that's a pretty open-ended category right now.
Yeah, agreed.
But this is a boost. This is a boost for Past Lives.
It is a potential boost, but it's also on the flip side, people could be like, oh, at least she got this. Right. And then they feel absolved of trying to vote for it and anything else at the Oscars. So I don't know, it could kind of cut either way. But regardless, happy to see this win. And then the other one that sort of was an interesting indicator potentially for Oscars momentum is the director of one of the documentary feature nominees. PT, do you want to?
Oh, because
you figured out how to pronounce the director's name.
I'm just so proud. Yes, it's the documentary 20 Days in Mariupol, which the city name I did not double check how to pronounce, so that could be wrong. But it's
that's what all the other critics seem to be saying.
Okay.
Not that means it's right, but that's at least we have company.
Okay, yeah, all of our Western ignorance can be contained into that pronunciation. So that's good. And the director is Mstislav Chernov, who there's just a lot of vowels in there. So that's Mstislav Chernov is my understanding of how you should pronounce it based on likely AI generated Google, YouTube videos of how to pronounce it. But I mean, I think that movie was already like the clear front runner. I could be wrong. I haven't been like fully locked in on that, but I've kind of feel in the same way that like Navalny last year, it is that like, here's the current events thing that's going on. And, Putin and Russia and Ukraine, like that conflict, that's obviously very important and still happening, and is a little less confusing within the voting body in the way that perhaps the other major international conflict right now is, but
right
between Israel and Gaza, where there's no movies that are saying that, but there's obviously, I think, it's stronger divides. There's more balanced perspectives, and I don't necessarily mean that in a good way. But there's more people who have opinions in different directions, as opposed to
Hmm.
like, yep, like Ukraine's getting a raw deal. This isn't good. Folks are pretty comfortable with that as the go-to. Not everybody in America, but I think most people, and certainly most people in the Academy. So I think that has been the front runner for a while, and it getting the DGA documentary award for the director only carries it further forward towards victory.
All right. So I think the last thing I'll say before we move on to Super Bowl is that even though I watched this piecemeal in like little iPhone clips on Instagram, it made me wistful because I was like, I would totally watch this whole thing if it were televised. And it actually seemed a little bit better than, say, like the Globes, in terms of a presentation, because one, Judd Apatow, or Judd Apatow, I guess is how you probably pronounce it, was the host, and his monologue. I think the video I watched wasn't complete of his monologue, but it was so funny, and he did the thing that we were talking about. I know that if you see news articles about him, the headline, I think, is typically that his monologue was political, that he kind of made jabs at the presidential election that's coming up and stuff like that, and got political. But he made all of these like just like nerdy movie lover jokes that I was like, this kills. I like, why don't all the hosts do this? Martin Scorsese in particular was just like losing his mind. He was so entertained, and a lot of and laughing at the jokes about him. So like there was one that was like, and again the sound was off, so I was like, I think they were talking about how he got a Lifetime Achievement Award, and then they listed like 5 other films that are really good, and he was like, that was given a little prematurely. And then he was like, and all those movies were made after he quit doing cocaine. Can you imagine like what we'd be getting if that weren't the case? Or so, and then yeah, and it was really just, all the jokes seemed like in enough that even if they were poking fun at people, everyone was into it. And so yeah, I was really appreciative of that. And so if you could find a video of that on the internet, I would go check it out. And also Greta Gerwig came away, I think, very well, because her I'm nominated speech, when it was her turn to go up, Ryan Gosling introduced her, and she basically did the like, I'm nominated with all my heroes thing, but it was so good. It was like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, oh, she gets all these people. Like, she especially when she got to Scorsese. Scorsese had a much longer list of accolades, and she got so specific about like certain cinematic techniques that he has and stuff like that. So it was really nice, because it was like, we got from Barbie that there were some deep cuts, like film nerd jokes in there. And I feel like this corroborated that like she even said it. She was like, I wanted to become a director because I love movies, and so that is what inspires me, is like a love of movies, which seems cliched and obvious, but like, yeah.
With the benefit of her being a performer in addition to a director,
Oh, that's
so
true.
she could
She
probably
can deliver.
deliver it better. Even I mean, and the cliche is a cliche because it's frequently true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. Maybe that will help her campaign for Best Director as well at the Oscars. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah. But again, like Celine Song, maybe in screenplay, maybe that's that's the space where she could be rewarded. I don't think that's again, not likely, because Oppenheimer might be just marching all the way through, but that's good. I'm glad that happened, and I'm glad people got to see it who were there in the room. There's always a part of me that's like, maybe we don't need all these ceremonies televised. Like, the more to make the transition into the Super Bowl, I remember feeling like you will go to watch the Super Bowl, like 15 years ago, maybe even, more recently than that. And it would be like, oh, like, there's some talk, there's going to be a new Doritos commercial. Like, it's supposed to be funny. Like, who knows? Whereas now I feel like for the last decade or so, it's just been like the week before is like, here are all the commercials. Like, this is what they're going to be. Or like, here's a teaser for the commercial, but you're going to know, like, it's a Breaking Bad thing. Or like, there's a bit with Arnold Schwarzenegger, or there's a bit with Christopher Walken. And you're like, oh, okay. And then it happens and you're like, yeah, I heard about that. And like, yeah, I saw that. And so that's sometimes kind of what all these preliminary shows feel about leading up to the Oscars, where it's like, we can do all of our things, but especially if like with love and full respect, letters winner, I believe, Da'Vine Joy Randolph, is just like not going to be a surprise when she wins.
Right.
And if you've watched the preliminaries, you've probably seen a version of her speech 5 or 6 times. So like the idea of, I wish there were another ceremony I could watch to further spoil the Oscars experience seems, against my instinct, but it does sound like a very unique ceremony. And because there's only this handful of awards, there's only 3 feature films, and then there's like, 4 or 5 TV, and I think an advertising one that, no offense, they could not broadcast that. But they could probably get through all of that in, an hour and a half or 2 hours. So that could be cool. I like it. But then again, maybe the jokes were flowing in an entertaining way because it was like, who's going to see this outside of obsessives who would look for bootleg internet videos from the crowd?
That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, oh, maybe this is hitting so well for me because it is more of it's the audience is different, right? It's not the general public that they're pitching the monologue to, which they do at Golden Globes and Oscars, to my chagrin, oftentimes. So,
I think we'll get to this. Maybe I'll save this for either a lead up to or even reaction to the Oscars this year. But like, I think there's some sports parallels to like when you get to the playoffs or when you get to like a national broadcast, when they're just sort of like, hey, like, do you know the rules? Like, we're going to tell you about the rules. And it's like, yeah, like the people who watch this know the rules. Like, maybe you shouldn't like pitch it to the people who already are into it and let everyone else figure it out and pick it up along the way, instead of like trying to almost condescend to like new people, but then you're alienating the returning people. So yeah, I think speaking like everyone already likes movies and knows a lot about movies probably would make more sense than trying to act like, who watched all these movies? They're long. Like, that's not like really the vibe to set when you're, going to spend 3.5 hours watching people give each other trophies about this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, now I'm just trying to remember other Judd Apatow jokes. They were so good. He had one where he was like, and when AI writes, and he like mashed a bunch of genres together, but they were so specific to like things that are very popular that it was really well done.
That's funny.
So yeah, it's making me want to go back and watch it now. But yeah, okay. So I think we did a good job with DGA awards.
I think so.
Now on to the Super Bowl, and to kind of pick up on your transition, I would also say that the people who are supposed to be benefiting from, oh, here are the rules, if you've missed it, they're in the other room getting a snack. Like it's not like
right. They're taking a break between commercials. Like
exactly.
They're not
there but obviously, the past few Super Bowls, I feel like I've really been like, oh God, I wonder what movie trailers are going to drop during this. PT, did you feel like this delivered? Were there good ones?
I don't think that there was nothing that I was like, oh my God, like, yes, finally. But I think that there are a couple caveats on that, which is, as I was mentioning earlier about, the regular commercials, there's a degree of, because I'm just like keeping my radar out on movie news anyway, it was like, these things are happening. So I'm glad I saw it, but I wasn't like surprised in the way that you're talking about, like, ooh, what's coming. There were a couple of things that I've seen trailers for in the theater, like really recently, that I was excited when I saw that trailer. And if I hadn't seen the trailer, I would have been really excited for the commercial. But because I was like, yeah, I saw that. Like I saw that in the theater. But again, sort of a privileged perspective of being able to go to the theater more somewhat frequently. And then there was a degree of like my nerdiness outside of my movie fandom was like, is there going to be like a new Star Wars TV show? And there was not. So I was let down there. Don't worry, folks. There's going to be plenty of Star Wars TV shows, but there's no commercial for a Star Wars TV
Right.
show during the Super Bowl. But I think you were trying to set me up to start listing the first one, but I didn't take it. So I'll throw it back to you. Was there anything that really excited you that you want to start with?
Yeah, I think the main one, because I'm still, unlike many other people, hanging on and staying loyal to Marvel, was the Deadpool 3 trailer, which has now been renamed Deadpool and Wolverine, which was news to me. So I think I was less tapped into the telegraphing of what was going to be during the Super Bowl. And so I was just like, oh, that's right. Yeah, Deadpool 3, let's go. And I think that one definitely didn't disappoint. I was very excited about that. And got to the point where I was like, could this save Marvel? And there's a joke about that in the trailer. So like, joke's on me, I guess. Really? And what I mean is that there's a point at which, because Deadpool breaks the fourth wall all the time, if you're not aware, but there's a line where he's like, I'm Marvel Jesus. Like I could save the MCU essentially. And I was like, maybe this movie could save the MCU because like it looks really fun and it looks like the perfect opportunity for Marvel to be like making fun of itself in a way that kind of semi absolves it of the flops that they've had in the past year. You know what I mean?
Yes, and uh, decisions that didn't seem bad at the time that
Right.
now are a problem, i.e., the big bad villain Kang the Conqueror being played by an actor who is no longer associated with Marvel and no longer playing the role because of his problems with violence and legal issues related to that. So yeah, I this is the one that's the most memorable to me. It's also interesting that it was the one that wasn't really fully aired during the Super Bowl. It was a
I was mad
teaser
about that.
for the to go to the online and watch it, and like a good little minion, I did, and I went. I was like, "Yep, let me go." Like during some sort of like second down, like they're gonna run the ball, it's gonna go 3 yards, nothing's gonna happen. And they're gonna talk for a little while. I can spend 2.5 minutes watching this trailer. I did have a good time as someone who is a little over Marvel, and when I'm not watching a Deadpool movie, I'm like, the shtick is a little old. I don't know, like whatever. But then I'm always enjoying it. Like when I have watched the two Deadpool movies, I'm just like, yeah, I'm having a good time. There's something very 90s about that
Mm.
level of meta commentary and fourth wall breaking that you know comes from Deadpool. I believe that at least that version of the comic book
Hmm.
character was like late 80s through the 90s. And there, I don't know, there's something that still sort of warms my little indie 90s heart. That Yeah, all those movies from then, your Charlie Kaufman, Paul Thomas Anderson type self-referential ways of advancing through stories, taken to an extreme degree. But I didn't think this would happen. There were, it's sort of set up around the TVA, which is the Time Variance Authority thing in Loki, agency that exists, that can kind of deals with different timelines and culling people who have spun off in different branches, which seems like a great way to bring a character that was in some standalone movies into the MCU. And because it's Deadpool, of course, he also is referring to, I'm now in the cinematic universe.
Hmm.
I'm Marvel Jesus. I'm going to save this whole franchise. Uh, Very funny. And so, like that's interesting. And the degree to which, even just in the trailer, it's tying into some of the more positive things of Marvel from the last few years is certainly intriguing.
And to be honest, that was the part I was most surprised by because I think my understanding of the past Deadpool movies is they're mostly their own thing, right? Like, yes, they might make jokes that break the fourth wall and be kind of meta, but at the end of the day, the story is pretty much kind of like self-contained from what I remember. You
It
know what I
was
mean?
technically in the same world as the Singer X-Men movies
Okay,
because he
which makes
goes
sense.
to the Xavier's whatever. He goes to the academy, and there's
Right.
one time when he opens the door, and a bunch of the X-Men actors are just silent behind a door and hope he doesn't see them, and he doesn't, and so he closes
That's
the
right.
door, which is a great joke. But I think that's the only connection that has existed
Right, right. So the
is
fact
that
that this
world.
is very clearly connecting it to the Disney Plus Marvel shows, I was like, "Oh," like, and I when Loki was airing, I was often wondering, "Oh, this conceit of the TVA and the multiverse and sort of like there's a lot of potential for it to be useful," and I kept waiting for the payoff, and I assumed that would be in Multiverse of Madness, and now I'm getting a down far too down a rabbit hole for Marvel, but like, so I'll try to bring us back, but like I had already kind of like dismissed that as an idea that the TVA would be this like rejoinder series that could kind of like open up the multiverse and stuff like that, and then like really cinch the sort of current saga that we're in and stuff like that. Not that anyone cares about that anymore. So then I was like, oh, it's here. The TV is here, and it's like using the same effects. Like the time door looks exactly the same. The like vintage looking TV is still the same. Matthew McFadden from Succession, I don't think is the same. I was like, why is he here?
I bet because he's great. Like, what a great
Yes,
choice.
he is great, and I was like, oh, he's gonna be fun. Like that looks really funny. The thing I was most excited about, though, and I think that the trailer did the best job with, even though it's been well documented that Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is going to be in this movie. Like he's been in videos with Ryan Reynolds, like on the internet, like you know what I mean. Like there's a whole social media campaign about them bantering with each other about this movie and stuff like that. So I think while it was not a surprise, the trailer still had a lot of restraint in terms of we never actually see Hugh Jackman, and just the way that like Wolverine's silhouette literally overshadows Deadpool's, and then we see the claws come out. I was just like, this is the best. I'm so excited for this now. So I think as a trailer, it made a lot of smart choices, is my point.
Yes. I agree. I agree. I think this is the most effective one of something that to me was brand new. The movie that was advertised, I'm making a pivot. If you want to keep talking about, say anything else about Deadpool and Wolverine, you can stop me. But the movie that I'm most excited about that there was a commercial for that I saw during the game is Monkey Man, which is I saw the trailer for it before a re-release screening of Dune the other night, and was not aware of it. I had not heard of it. It is produced by Jordan Peele, co-written and directed, and starring Dev Patel. And it's basically South Asian John Wick. And like just like Dev Patel looks mad and wants revenge and is going to beat people up for it. And that is amazing. It looks incredible.
That's how did I miss this? Is now my react. I did not see this at all.
It was late. It showed up late in the game.
Oh, okay.
I feel like if the intro it was what there was my unsolicited sports analysis of a game that I only barely cared about was the game was pretty kind of boring and there was a lot of defense, which defense isn't always boring, but if you don't really care about the teams, you're just like no one's scoring, whatever, for a little while. And then the like fourth quarter, they started scoring again, and then it was like, are they going to tie? What's going to happen? They went to overtime, going a little back and forth. And I think that like there may have been a pivot in for a lot of people from I'm going to be paying attention to the commercials and then zone out during the game because nothing's exciting in the game to getting wrapped up in the game. And then when the commercials come, being like, now I'm going to get another drink. I'm going to get a snack. I'm going to look at something that's not my TV. I'm going to look at my little screen instead of my big screen, or whatever. So I think that maybe this could have been slept on, but the trailer in the full like 2.5 minute trailer in the theater got me more excited than the commercial.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like the pitch is the pitch. It's Dev Patel
Yeah, that sounds
in a John
amazing.
Wick movie, and he looks great.
As soon as we stop recording, I'm gonna go watch this trailer.
Great, you should. And I'm excited for it. I was glad having again just seen this on Friday night and being like, what the, I hadn't heard about this, like this sounds so good. And then it getting this big boost in a Super Bowl commercial, even if it's late in the game and maybe people might have missed it, it's going to be on the list of things that were advertised during the game.
So the next one is a very different film, but I think this had the most, oh, this actually looks good effect on me, and that is Wicked, which is based on a Broadway musical about, it's based on the witches from The Wizard of Oz, let's say it that way. And I really enjoy this musical. I love the music from it. And plus, it is directed by John Chu, who brought us Crazy Rich Asians. And after that, and more kind of relevant to the genre, In the Heights. So, which I really liked and I thought was like mostly underrated as a movie musical. So this was really exciting to me because I knew that this was happening, but I had sort of written it off, sort of forgotten about it, being like, okay, whatever. And this sort of sucked me back in to be like, wow, this actually looks really good. The casting is Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, which again, in particular, Ariana Grande, I was like, has Ariana Grande been in movies? I don't think so. So that's interesting. But, you know, I was totally convinced and sucked in. And the effects in this and like the production design, everything looked really good. My only beef is that they didn't let anybody sing in this trailer. And this is a thing that has been happening. It happened with Wonka, and then everyone was like, oh, Wonka looks weird. It happened with The Color Purple, and then like apparently after Christmas Day, nobody saw The Color Purple. So like, let musicals be musicals. This is my platform for 2024.
I was wondering, I was like, are they going, are they really going to hold back? Because there were a few music swells that felt like it could have led to singing or at least montages of people singing. But like, yeah, like that, like Mean Girls, the musical redo of Mean Girls was the other big one I recall that was hiding the fact it was a musical. It was showing things that looked choreographed, but not to such a degree that unless you knew, you would be like, this must be a musical. But like, this is a very famous Broadway musical that I think won a lot of Tonys and ran on Broadway a long time, may still be running. I'm not certain of that. So you would think that they would want to be like, hey, why not come check out this big musical? The other thing, I'm besides that, I generally agree with you because I was sort of like, you know, I'm not as big into musicals as you are. I always liked the idea of Wicked, like when it was a book and then it became a movie of like, oh yeah, like that. I feel like that came out before we felt kind of inundated with what if we heard about the bad character's perspective, the bad
Right.
guy, and learn why they're actually human, which maybe we've done a few too many times, but it was at the forefront of that. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I like that. And so I've always been interested. And, you know, there is some degree of whenever there's been a movie that's like, it's another thing set in Oz. It's like, why am I not watching just The Wizard of Oz? Like, what do you have that convinces me to not watch the classic movie that we know is great? But this did look really good. Jeff
That's such a
Goldblum.
film snob answer, first of all.
It is.
But continue.
It is. It's also a bad tendency I have in general of like, why would I do this thing? Why would I do X thing when there's something similar that's Y thing that I already like? Which is not really a good reason because there's lots of things that you like that are like things you've already liked. And I mean, you do the new thing.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, this happened to me with Mary Poppins Returns. Despite my love of Lin-Manuel Miranda and Emily Blunt, I was just like, I could just go watch Mary Poppins. So I totally get where you're coming from.
Right. But I'm admitting it's a tendency I have in lots of different things that I need to be careful about of like, because you can box you in into not trying something new. Anyway, it looked good. It was like, this looks good. This looks fun. I was noting, they're hiding the music. That's fun. They're also hiding that this is a part one. This is a 2-part movie. And so similar to having just, again, my whole life is now just centered around having having gone to see Dune again.
It's a great place to be.
It is. Look, I'm not gonna lie. That movie's incredible. We should have had a podcast when Dune came out.
I started watching the David Lynch one. the other day.
I also watched that one. In the time after seeing the this one, the Villeneuve one, and it's
We
trying. It's
definitely
trying
need to
stuff.
do a Dune 2 prep episode.
Yeah,
We
back
can
to
talk about all
Arrakis.
things Dune. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Agreed. That's good motivation for me to get back into the books as well. Anyway, Dune came out and it was called Dune. And then you went to the movie and the title card comes up and it says Dune Part 1. And people were like, what? And then the movie ended with like one of the last lines is, this is only the beginning. And then you've been there for 2 hours and 40 minutes.
You're like, say
And
what?
and everyone's like, oh God, okay. And this also Across the Spider-Verse created a similar thing where they announced it as it's going to be Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Then it came out without Part 1. I get it. Dead Reckoning Part 1 came out and people were like, boo, we don't like that. And so they've dropped the Part 1. But like, I feel like people are going to go into Wicked probably not knowing unless they give more information more explicitly. And like, that's going to hurt the movie because people are going to be bummed that it's not a complete story.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's going to end when The Wizard of Oz starts. And then like people will either be like, oh, this is supposed to link. Now I just go watch The Wizard of Oz. And I think they're like, no, there's another 2-hour movie that you're going to come back to. That's the second act of the play. This is basically intermission. But anyway, all that to say that the commercial looked great.
Yeah, I'm really curious what they're going to call the second movie. Because isn't the move, if you're just calling this one Wicked, isn't the move to just call the next one something else? And then it's like assumed that they're both two halves of the same, you know what I mean?
Well, based on one of the other movies that we got a commercial for during the Super Bowl, it would just be called Wickeds. Just put an S. Just put an S at the end, like
and dramatically reveal it.
Wicked, and then it's just like a sizzling, like a green finger just draws.
Or it's
it.
like
Just,
it's like a lightning bolt S, like.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
That's what you need to do.
The movie I'm referencing there is, of course, a new entry in a longstanding franchise, Twisters. Which is a sequel to the 1996 movie Twister. It's not that was facetious. It's not a longstanding franchise. It's just a movie. They've tapped out of movies from the 80s. They can do legacy sequels to, and we're starting to go into the 90s. And it's time. It's time for Twister. Apparently, it's Glenn Powell and a few other people, and they're chasing Twisters. But there's two of them. There's two of them now.
So we have to acknowledge the internet is very excited about this movie. I don't know if you've seen, like, lots of people are very excited about this. They're like, let's go. Like, this is, and I'm not unopposed. I'm not opposed to this movie at all. But was I asking for this movie? No.
I mean, if you told me, it's Glenn Powell, it's Daisy Edgar Jones, who I don't really know. Apologies. Anthony Ramos, Kieran Shipka, Maura Tierney in a Lee Isaac Chung directed movie, I would be like, that sounds great. The fact that it's a sequel to Twister, I'm just like, why? Like, what is happening? But who knows? Maybe the internet's right this time, and it's going to be really good. And
I have
to
say though, and granted, it's been a minute since I've seen the original Twister. Although I will say, like, I don't know if this is true for you because you're a little bit older, but Twister was like a pretty big deal, like a formative movie in terms of just like disaster movie thriller when I was growing up. So
this is maybe speaking to the 5-year gap between us, because that's the first movie I remember. I wouldn't say the first one I remember doing this, but I distinctly remember going to see it and sitting in the theater being like, this is not good. Like, I'm not enjoying myself. And then there would be like some special effects things and it would be, kind of fun. But yeah, I think that I'm just on that cusp of I was too old. Like, I was in my mid to late teens. I was 17, I think, when this came out. And so I was just kind of like, whatever, like, this is stupid.
You were too cool for it.
A little too cool for it. And so, it's like all the people that, hold Shrek in very like strong, like to be like, actually the first few Shrek movies are great. And I'm just like, I can't be there with you. But I do have movies from like the early 90s where I'm like, this movie's incredible. And I could understand people being like, no, it's not.
So what I was gonna say is that it doesn't appear, unless I'm just not remembering the original Twister movie, it doesn't appear like there's actually that much continuity or relevance or like tying the story of this movie to the other one. It's just, it seems to me more like it's just hitting the high notes of what we're expecting from a Twister movie. You know what I mean? Like it's like,
Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page and it says it's a standalone sequel, and I don't know what that means in terms of
I think it means that no
definition.
events of this movie are predicated on the last one. Which is the impression
But
I got from the
but
trailer.
it also says that the main female character is the daughter of Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton
Oh,
from the
that just feels like we get a shot of a weathered photograph of them,
right.
and then that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like to be like, oh, my mom and dad, whatever. Like there's one
and
scene, and that's it.
climate change, like the evolution of things. I'm sure that like the idea of
I mean, they're
storm
drones.
chasers.
They're drones in this.
Yeah. I mean, there's regular internet access nowadays, right? So that would make it a different movie.
That's fair.
I do want to note, having just said that I rolled my eyes at Twister, Helen Hunt, Bill Paxton, Jamie Gertz, Carrie Elwes, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Alan Ruck, Todd Field, and Jeremy Davis.
I don't know what you're on about. I remember this movie being good.
It wasn't good, but it was a great cast, and there was a flying cow. And you knew the bad guys were bad guys because they drove big black cars. That was the big thing I remembered, was that the good guys had like these like ragtag collection. It was very like Rebel Alliance and Galactic Empire. And it's like, oh, I get it. These guys are the bad guys. Cool. But again, I was 17. So, you know.
Okay. All that said, I will say from this trailer, the character that Glenn Powell is playing looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It looks like he's really hamming it up and chewing on the scenery in a way that I think could make this movie enjoyable. But yeah, I think like, you know, if you think about it as just kind of like a fairly on the surface thriller, like this was the precursor to Sharknado, right?
In many ways.
So it's not going to be like that, is my point.
Right. Fair. It'll be a step above.
And it's not going to be as bad as the Pierce Brosnan Volcano movie, which I don't remember the name of that one, but
that one was Dante's Peak, not to be confused with Volcano, the Volcano movie with Tommy Lee Jones.
Maybe we have to do a whole disaster movie episode.
I mean,
when this movie comes out.
I'm not against that.
Because apparently I've seen a bunch and I don't remember. That's always good. There was a Minions trailer that I didn't know was a trailer until then.
Agreed. Until I looked at the list of what had been, which I think just speaks to maybe both of us tuning out when the Minions appear and just being like, cool, it's an ad for something that the Minions are advertising.
Well, because sometimes they're just there. You know what I mean? Like they're not, they don't have to have a movie to just be around.
Yeah.
So,
it's true.
And the thing I was doing is because my kids they don't necessarily want to sit and watch all the Despicable Me movies, but they're big fans of the Minions. Like anytime Minions are just running around, they're like, Minions, haha. Like, so I was trying to get their attention because they were not watching the Super Bowl, and I was just yelling Minions across the room. Hey everybody, Minions, and then my kid, they ran over, and by then it was over because this was a very short commercial. And I was like, sorry. I'm like, they might be back later. Yeah. They were like, where are the Minions? But this starts out as, it looks like a YouTube think piece on AI.
Yes.
And then there are Minions. So there's that. And then I have questions like, does that mean that this movie Despicable Me 4 is somehow about AI? Like, I just didn't understand it.
It's actually a linking sequel between Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning and Dead Reckoning Part 2. It is about the entity. The Minions are involved. That Tom Cruise won't say anymore.
Oh, that would be amazing. I feel like he'd be game for that. The contractor, right? He'd be like, I'll do a movie of Mission Impossible Despicable Me crossover.
Yeah, what if the entity like was fighting Gru or whatever, like off on the side while the
The
Impossible
minions are doing
Mission
their thing.
team are is doing one thing, and then the minions and Gru are fighting it out in a different
Or the
corner.
minions are actually the ones in the submarine the whole
Yes.
time. Like
Yes. Like they have one of the key components, like they have one of the cross keys.
And they're like, banana key. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they don't know it's a key, and then and then you pay us to write this movie, apparently.
Right. And then they have to interact with a not CGI'd live action Tom Cruise, who will take it from them.
It worked for Roger Rabbit. It could work here.
It's true.
I don't know.
It's movie history, Tom. Get on board.
I mean, he did Tropic Thunder, and I was just watching like a TikTok video about this today. The only thing he demanded was to have fat hands.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you remember this? And then
he
was like, okay, I'll do this part, but I gotta have fat hands and I gotta dance. And they're like, do we need? And he's like, no, you're not hearing me. I gotta have fat hands and I gotta dance. And then they were like, I guess you don't say no to Tom Cruise. So then that's what happened in the movie.
That's funny. That sounds similar, and this is stopping us from making this a quick episode, so you can cut this if it's not relevant enough. But to speak to the most affecting moment of Super Bowl commercials, not directly about a movie, was one of the post Gronk tries to kick a field goal build up things, which I think was tied with one of the gambling sites that is surely not going to cause massive social upheaval as we weave gambling into mainstream society. But he was like, I'm going to kick a field goal, and if I, you can bet on if I make it or don't, and it was like a free bet at one of the gambling sites. And like the commercials through the football season had been Carl Weathers coaching him on how to kick a football. And so, he did it. Like it was a live thing he did at the start, right before the game started, and he missed it. And so they clearly had 2 commercials ready to go. And it was different people reacting as if they had gambled and lost money, and famous people. And one of them was Carl Weathers, who of course passed away like a week or 2 ago, which made me sad to see him. And they gave a little like tribute to him at the end, which of course completely undermined the humor of the commercial, but whatever, you got to do it. Anyway, your story reminded me of when when they were writing Arrested Development. This came out in the wake of his death. I saw this. Mitch Hurwitz, I think, that was the showrunner, said they had come up with like a joke, or there'd been a throwaway joke that David Cross's character Tobias had gone to take a Carl Weathers course, but like didn't get in or whatever, like a season before. And then they were like, oh, wouldn't it be funny? We can bring Carl Weathers in and do this whole like Rocky spoof with like him training him like Rocky 3. And then they called Carl Weathers. It was like, Carl, like it's Arrested Development. Like this is the show, and we have this idea, and you'd be working with David Cross, this comedian from, these things you might have seen. And he was like, great, as long as it's not like a Rocky thing, because that's like played out and boring. And the guy's like, oh yeah, of course it wouldn't be. Like, no, like, I mean, what would you want it to be?
They're like,
instead?
Quick, we got to go rewrite this joke.
Well, and then Carl Weathers was like, yeah, I mean, it just feels like I've done so many Rocky things. Like, I think it would be funny if I was just really cheap. And they're like, what? It was like, what if I'm just, everything I do is to try to like cut corners and save money on anything? And like, wouldn't that be funny to think of like someone like me doing that, like that everyone knows? And he's like, yeah, I guess. And then like, we went to the writers and they were like, that is kind of funny. And then there's like, that's how you got a stew going.
That's what's in there.
That's how we got there. Yeah. So anyway, that's probably worth cutting. I do
remember when I originally aired thinking that was really random. And I'm like,
apparently, yeah, Carl called it just like Tom Cruise called for the big hands and the dancing. So we'll bring it back, loop it up. That's all somehow about Despicable Me 4. Yep. That's what all of that was about.
Somehow the minions returned. So, I mean, I could talk about Kung Fu Panda 4.
Yeah,
but I also don't have to.
Yeah, and I mean, similarly, like I wasn't like particularly, the other movie I was referencing earlier was that there's a commercial for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That is a trailer that I have now seen probably a dozen times. That's like one of the Alamo go-tos when I've gone to see old movies or new movies. Since the beginning of December, they've been playing the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes trailer, and there was some different stuff, but not that much different. So like, I don't know, seems fine. There's a degree to which, for me, I have maybe an outlier opinion. This is another one. Maybe we can discuss another opening to revisit the wider franchise. But those recent Planet of the Apes movies that started with the James Franco led one, which I think was Dawn, Rise, and then Dawn, and then War, all of the Planet of the Apes. For me, it was diminishing returns. I think a lot of people liked the second and third one more. I like the first one more. Like I like that one, and I like thought the second one was really good, and the third one I was a little bit like, okay, like I'm a little burned out on these stories, so I'm not super pumped for let's jump ahead a generation and see what it's like. But you know, I'll probably still talk myself into seeing it. Like I'll be like, well, I don't know, it's Apes. That should be
So
fun.
this may need to be next year's Mission Impossible project because I have actually never seen any of these movies.
That's fine. I'm not as like committed to the idea that you will like all these movies like I was about Mission
People say they're
Impossible.
good though. They say they're
Well,
like solid science fiction movies.
but yeah, the original movie from like the late 60s is great. It's very slow, you know, for now, and the problem is it's all building up to something that you probably already know just from pop culture. But like when you watch it, you're still like you can hopefully everyone is somewhat able to do this of like, what if I didn't know? Like, you know, what if I watch The Usual Suspects and like think about how I didn't know what the twist is going to be at the end.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you know, like you can do that and be like, oh, like, yeah, this must have really like packed a punch. And then there's like 4 sequels in the rest of the 60s and the mid 70s that get progressively crazier. Spoilers, the world ends at the end of like the second or third movie, and then they're like, we still want to make more, so they have to like jump back in time. But like
Oh,
everybody knows that it's all going to like the end of the world because it ended a few movies
that's
ago.
funny.
And then there's the Tim Burton one, which is bad. And then there's these 3 that came out, which I thought were pretty good, and I think are sort of like how, you know, it's sort of, you know, how did we get to where things are in the original movie. So it's a little hard because it's like, I don't know, I haven't watched the 70s ones in a long time. I don't know how many of those are good.
I was mostly talking about the newer ones because I feel
I
like
see.
those ones people whenever I share that I have not seen those, people are like, oh, but the new ones are actually really good. Like they're like, you should go see that. Like everyone always encourages me to go see the new ones. So
You should definitely watch the first, the Charlton Heston one, like the
right.
original one. Like that's a worthy like movie in and of itself. Yeah, and then those 3, I guess, are probably worth it. We could do a rewatch check-in. I guess we could take the temperature on how we're feeling
Yeah, I mean
about,
we might have other things going on. That's fine.
right, the podcast
Um
of the release of the movie of the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
yeah, the Dune prep episode seems a lot more appealing than this. But I'm just saying, if we, you know, I am available to watch binge all these movies for the first time and react to them in the way that I
Okay.
did the Mission Impossible ones. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and then the rest of the list sort of gets into trailers that we've seen in other contexts, like you were saying, either in the theater or just, you know, on the internet. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you know, so that's fine. I'm gonna do a
Did you want to explain to me the Randall Park joke of the
sure. So
of the?
there was a commercial for the movie If, which is actually, you know, speaking of a Roger Rabbit type situation, is a very sort of live action mixed with CGI environment with Ryan Reynolds as a human and child actor who is also there. And this is another movie where I've seen like a full trailer. But this movie didn't really get into exactly what happens, but it's all about imaginary friends. And I think Ryan Reynolds like works for like the organization that distributes imaginary friends, whatever, something like that, where like he knows all the imaginary friends and can see them, and they're all CGI characters like bouncing around. And the movie's written and directed by John Krasinski, who, for those who may not know, played the character of Jim on the American version of The Office. That's where he rose to prominence. And one of the I actually have no concept because I have not watched this deep into the American version of The Office. That like one of the sort of a joke for a little while is Randall Park plays someone named Jim who just at one point tries to just pretend he's Jim. Like they arrange it like as a bit to like piss off Dwight, yeah, and maybe confuse people, where he just walks in and pretends like he's Jim and he's always been Jim, but he's not Jim and he is of a different race, and hilarity ensues. So the trailer joke was Randall Park, or the commercial joke for the Super Bowl was Randall Park and Ryan Reynolds sitting like, hello and welcome to like this movie we worked on, and Randall Park just being like, as writer-director John Krasinski, I'm so excited about what we're doing. And then Ryan Reynolds being like, you're not John Krasinski. And it's just referencing that thing from The Office. And it was very quick. It was only like 10 seconds. And then there was maybe like 10 seconds of clips from the movie. And yeah, I don't, it looks like a movie that your kids will want to go see. So good luck.
So thanks. I just remember when the initial teaser came out for this, lots of people were confused because they assumed it was a horror movie and not a children's movie.
Yes, because
John Krasinski,
A Quiet Place was
right.
his franchise,
right? And then they watched the trailer and they were like, "Wait, what?" There's furry monsters and they look friendly. I'm like, what is happening right now? So yeah, I still don't have my head quite wrapped around what this movie is. Is it just purely for kids, or is it trying to do something else? Like,
my guess is that it's like aiming for a Pixar, Monsters Inc. type vibe. So like it could be for adults because you've got Ryan Reynolds and he'll do like not obviously full R-rated Deadpool, but he'll do some winky asides that will like play to parents. But I think it's a little bit more like, Some Good News or whatever that thing was that John Krasinski was doing during the pandemic, where he's just like, I'm just going to talk about things that are good. It's those vibes of like, here's just a positive story that, I'm trying to get out there, versus that Quiet Place horror or his, he does the Jack Ryan movies, right? And he did like the Benghazi movie. Like he starred in these action movies that are more like military tough guy, things. And so I think this is like, it's more that internet, like, I'm just like a cuddly fun guy side of him, which, it could be good. People could like it. There's a market for it. People like Pixar movies. What if there's...
And now I'm realizing that the real winner of the Super Bowl is Ryan Reynolds, because he's popped up twice now in our conversation.
He has, and he was responsible for, I don't know if it's one of the best, but he was responsible for another commercial, which was the
Wrexham one, right?
The Anthony Hopkins for the coffee, because the coffee company is the sort of cold brew off the in a bottle company. Stoke is a is the naming sponsor for the stadium in Wrexham, and it was Welsh native Anthony Hopkins pretending to be the mascot at a Wrexham football game. Very funny. So yeah, he
really threw himself into the role.
Yes. So yeah, it was a good Super Bowl for Ryan Reynolds, and his wife hung out with the most famous person attending the game. So
she was in the squad.
Yes. And there's a non-zero chance Ryan was there in the back of the box, just not paying attention.
He's just on his phone checking to make sure the Deadpool trailer came out.
He's checking on the Deadpool trailer. He's, I'm sure, checking like Mint Mobile stock. He's probably making some other business arrangements. He's very savvy.
Right.
He seems very on top of things.
Did you have a favorite non-movie trailer commercial?
I have to succumb to my just like basic Boston roots and say it was the Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, J-Lo, Tom Brady, many other people, Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Yes.
Basically, it's just like Ben Affleck's an incredibly frustrating person to deal with. Was the joke of he's like, I'm going to try to be a rapper on a J-Lo album. And all of his friends being like, Jesus, like, let's not do that. And J-Lo like trying to not say no, but also trying to get him to leave. I thought it was pretty funny. And I deeply appreciate that, like the degree to which Ben Affleck, even when it, not that it now is his lowest points, but at his lowest points has always seemed to be in on the joke that is like his public reputation.
I feel like the addition of Matt Damon in that ad really made it. I feel like it's only like sort of funny unless until they go full Good Will Hunting.
Full Good Will Hunting, and Matt Damon just so embarrassed and ashamed to be there. He had the best lines. I even as someone who grew up in Boston rooting for the New England Patriots, I'm over Tom Brady as a public persona, but he was pretty funny in there as like just someone who's totally clueless, where he's just like, is this going to be on the record? Like he had a couple of pretty funny little like jump ins in the conversation.
He might
as
have
well.
been in the most commercials.
Yeah, he was in at least 3.
He kept popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
And which makes sense. He's a former
famous
NFL player.
Yes.
Like,
he's a former NFL player who is finally retired, and so folks can like stop feeling like they're being, supporting one team over another by having him in a commercial. So yeah, he can do that. Peyton Manning still showing up. He was in 1 or 2. But yeah, I think the Dunkin' Donuts one is my favorite. I need to. Well, I've got 2 others that I know Jasmine wanted me to make sure I shout out, but I don't want to step on yours. Do you have a favorite? What was your favorite?
I do, but at first I want to just add that the thing I yelled at my TV during the Dunkin' Donuts was, maybe this has gone too far.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the delight in it. Yeah.
Yes.
So my favorite one was the Arnold Schwarzenegger State Farm
commercial,
just because, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, great. But also there were so many, it was clearly made by people who have seen Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Yes.
And with especially the addition of Danny DeVito and the twins and the twins reference. I was like, I love it.
I'm realizing now Twins is probably a great movie that I would be like, that movie's incredible. And I bet someone who is 5 years older than me would be like, huh? It actually wasn't that funny. It was someone who was 17 when that came out would be like, all right, buddy, calm down. So yeah, maybe Twins is my twister, is what I'm getting at for these ads. That one was great. And I did like the DeVito shout.
And it just like the neighbor delivery just never, they did it so many times and it never got old. My neighbor. Yeah. Like it's just, I was like, keep saying it, Arnold. Keep saying it. Don't stop.
There also, I don't know if you noticed, there was a shortened version because the game went to overtime. So they started having to either repeat commercials.
Oh, they were recycling the ads?
But they were showing sometimes like, I don't know if this is something anybody cares about, but in the actual Super Bowl ads, sometimes those ads are 30 seconds or a minute, but then when they run them later, they will run them for the next like few months. They'll be truncated, so they'll either the minute ones will be 30 seconds, the 30-second ones might be 15 seconds, just to get the most bang for their buck. And so there was another edit of that State Farm one that didn't go to Danny DeVito, but it ended with him and the director being like, neighbor, and then like Arnold was sitting in a helicopter, which is in the original ad, but he's in a helicopter in like a green screen thing, and it just ends with him saying, "Get me out of the chopper," and like just like full of disgust, like he's just so like annoyed
he's
that
over
he still has to be there. And that was great. That was another good little reference. The one that Jasmine wanted me to point out, she really liked the Christopher Walken one, which was basically Christopher, like how many people impersonate Christopher Walken to Christopher Walken and him just having to deal with that. She thought that was very amusing. And she liked, although she had heard about it beforehand, but she liked the CeraVe commercial with Michael Cera, which was Michael Cera trying to pitch it as like, shouldn't this be my product because it has my name? And she just thought that was really funny.
So like, apparently the internet started that. It was a meme.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So the internet was like, wouldn't it be funny if Michael Cera endorsed this product? And then they decided to actually run with it.
It got snakes on a plane into existence.
So.
Great. I mean, well, that was good. I don't know if she knew about the meme or if she did and was just happy it came to life, but those are, she said those are the things she wanted mentioned as good commercials, which I also enjoyed. I also endorse. Yeah, I don't know if there were any other ones that I was like.
The Beyonce one is the one that everyone's talking about.
Okay.
I thought it was funny, but it was like, I understand Beyonce is amazing at everything. Like I didn't need to and a whole ad to tell me that.
Right. Yeah. I feel like there was one or two other ones that I was like, oh, that was funny. Like that was well done, or that's clever.
There was one where everyone's trying to be Tina Fey. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
With Glenn Close.
That was fine. Yeah, Glenn Close was in it.
Yeah.
Now I just feel super snobby. I'm just like, yeah, I don't know, whatever. I mean, I appreciated just on the reality of Dan Levy and Heidi Gardner getting, I think, 3 commercials during the course of the movie for the home buying equivalent of the Jeff Goldblum apartments.com. Great. Like, they weren't particularly funny commercials to me, but like I liked the 2 of them, so I was glad they were getting a lot of money and, working.
The Jeff Goldblum Apartments one, I really liked.
Oh, sure. That had like
With
an
the 2
Independence
aliens,
Day
and he's like,
vibe.
"I don't wanna
Yeah.
assume anything," and then he's like, "I like these guys." I was just like, "Jeff
Yeah.
Goldblum, you're the best."
Yeah. Oh,
Both
yeah.
he and Nick Offerman, who was in the Aubrey Plaza Mountain Dew commercial, I wanna say.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I had the same reaction where I'm like, neither of them need to be
No.
working. And they probably are just bored and game for anything fun. And then John corrected me and was like, Jeff Goldblum probably has expensive habits. And I'm like, oh, you're probably right. So he needs to be in these commercials.
That's true. I mean, he did. I don't know if he still does it. He did play a jazz piano show every like Wednesday in Los Angeles for like a decade, which he probably doesn't make a lot of money from. That doesn't, mean he doesn't make enough money. But yeah, he probably spends reasonably well. But it's
He
also
seems like
like,
a gentleman who enjoys finer things. So
yes, and good for him. Good. I'm not upset to see Jeff Goldblum in an ad. I'm just sort of like, yeah, that's fun. And he's going to be the wizard in Wicked, so we
yeah,
get to see
and
him there
Michelle
too.
Yeoh. Yeah, like I'm actually stock is the most up for Wicked for me. I want to say, which I would
That's
not
fair.
have expected going into the Super Bowl.
I think for me, to your points earlier, it's Deadpool and Wolverine has the biggest stock jump for me. But I think Wicked's pretty far up there. The one movie we didn't mention that seemed reasonably prominent that I hadn't seen anything for before was the also John Krasinski adjacent A Quiet Place Day One,
Oh, that's
which
right.
is the prequel, which had Lupita Nyong'o in it. I wouldn't have known it was A Quiet Place, but that's possible because I don't really have A Quiet Place. Like, I've never seen either of those like all the way through.
Yeah, I had
I've
to
just seen
text you
like
and ask you,
clips.
what was that
You
commercial?
did.
What was that for? I just
Uh,
missed it. I was like, I don't even know. I'm like, it looks like some sort of horror thriller
well,
movie. I
at
have
the
no
end
idea
of the
what it is.
commercials, they put the title of the movie. They say like A Quiet Place.
Right, but I think I had missed the beginning.
I
Like
know.
I had
I
missed
think,
that part,
yeah,
and then
right.
at the end, I was like, what?
But yeah, it was. I mean, it looks okay. I mean, yeah, it looks like an alien. I mean, inevitably because it's day one, it's like this looks like an alien invasion movie of like everything's fine, and then suddenly there's aliens. As opposed to the other movies, which is like people like a Walking Dead situation of folks trying to
Hopefully, it's
survive.
not the handling the undead version of an alien invasion movie.
It certainly didn't look like it. I mean, it would be, it would have to be that they very selectively only chose the final like 5 minutes of
Right.
the movie if that's what they did. But no, I think it's
The rest of it's just Lupita Nyong'o watching TV.
yeah, it's Lupita Nyong'o just being like, I wish something would happen to me in my life. I wish these times weren't so staid and boring here in 2024. I wish things were interesting and exciting for me.
Okay, well, unlike the Super Bowl, I don't think we need to run into overtime. So I think this is a good place to wrap up. PT, remind folks again where they can find us.
They can find me personally, which is I'm sure was their initial question, on Letterboxd. And my handle there is PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF, all one word. And they can also, if they use Letterboxd, we're endeavoring to tag any reviews that we put up. Just you can see the spread of responses. When Jen does it, it's usually pretty well thought out. Sometimes even like a the short take version of what might go on her Substack. And Greg usually has like a paragraph. Antonio, I don't know if Antonio's tagging yet. We might have to talk to Antonio about the tag. But he writes nice things on Letterboxd, and then I write something very stupid. That's like, I try to have it just be a sentence. And whatever.
Greg opts for the one-liners
He does.
too.
That's true. He's also pithy from time to time. Successfully so. Well, it should be noted. So that if you click on any of our reviews and you click on the tag LTR Pod for the Long Take Review podcast, which is what you're listening to, then you should be able to enter into a selection of movies that person has reviewed, and you can pull down on the view menu to see everyone. And then you can also follow us on Instagram and Threads at the Long Take Review on both of those platforms. Subscribe, leave a review. Why don't you give us a rating on Apple and I believe Spotify in particular, because those are really prominent, and the algorithms will recommend things based on reviews. So hey, why don't you go and do that? That would be wonderful. We would love it. And you can also, if you want to contact us in a non-public way, you can send us an email, thelongtakereview@gmail.com, and that will get responded to at some point. Jen, where can people find you?
They can find me on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jen, or on Threads and Instagram at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI. Can't call any penalties. I shouldn't end with a football joke. This is not something I should try to do. No personal fouls. That's a thing, right?
Yeah, no delay of game. I think is what will be flagged for this taking an hour and a half.
That's fair.
But yeah, let's
Thanks,
huddle up
BT.
and snap the ball and run the wheel route. See you, everybody.
Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free to receive new podcast episodes, as well as written reviews of films with Oscar buzz and new films and series from pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.